Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the first and the inaugural episode of DevTalk. DevTalk is a monthly talk show curated by Dev Insights, where we invite policymakers, thematic leaders, development practitioners, innovators who have made significant contributions in the field of social development to talk about their journey and share their experiences. Let me introduce our very eminent guest speaker today on DevTalk. Today we have with us Mr. Rohit Bhardwaj, um, who serves as the Secretary, Sports Authority of India, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India. He is an ISS officer of 1998 batch, and in addition to his current professional responsibilities, he is actively involved in development of National Sports Data Repository. In the past, Mr. Bharadwaj has headed the Vital Statistics Division of the Office of Registrar General of India, ORGI, and under his exemplary leadership, 3 rounds of annual health survey, which is one of the largest demographic surveys in the world, covering a sample of 25 million persons. He has also been the architect of the cause of death report published through SRS, the sample registration system, based on verbal autopsy of 130,000 death data. To facilitate better management, Mr. Bharadwaj has, for the first time in the last 40 years, introduced data collection through a handheld device. Mr. Bharadwaj has represented the country at the Health Data Palooza conference on SDG indicators for sports and peace at Geneva and several other international conferences. He has also been a member of working group on model indicators on sports and the SDGs of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mr. Bharadwaj holds Masters in Statistics from the University of Delhi with demography as one of his major subjects. We welcome you on board, sir, and thank you very, very much for taking out very precious time from your very, very precious and a busy schedule. Thank you very much, sir, and we welcome you on the show.
Thank you, Paresh, for having me.
Thank you, sir. So let me also introduce our facilitator for today's episode of DevTalk. We are extremely delighted to have Mr. Prasann Thatte, who is a senior development professional working with Project Concern International as international non-profit, which is an international non-profit, as head of monitoring, learning, and evaluation for the Jivika Technical Support Program. This program represents the largest investment of BMGF in India and focuses on moving the needle on key maternal and child health and nutrition indicators by using SHGs, the self-help groups, as catalysts of behavior change. He also supports the BMGF-aided projects in Odisha and Uttar Pradesh, where PCI works with State Rural Livelihoods Mission in the space of gender and health and nutrition, respectively. In a career of over 2 decades, Prasann has worked with a range of reputed international organizations in corporate and non-corporate, such as Nielsen, Save the Children, Aga Khan Foundation, besides working with governments of Andhra Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh for about 5 years. His last engagement was with Reliance Foundation, India's largest private philanthropy, as a member of senior management team. Prasann is a postgraduate in economics and holds a PG diploma from IRMA, Anand. And he's currently based out of Delhi, NCR. Thank you very much, Prasann, for agreeing to facilitate the first and the inaugural episode of DevTalk. So over to you, Prasann.
Thank you, Paresh, for the fantastic introduction, and welcome Mr. Bharadwaj as well. The monitoring and evaluation space. The exposure to social sector research also allowed me to interact a lot with the governments and gave me precious opportunities to be part of some of the significant studies which contributed to policy making in this country. I would just begin with two quick examples. Early in the 2000s, the common service centers were introduced as part of meeting the rural demand for data-driven services in the country. And I was part of the survey of around 24,000 people across rural India, which identified the basic basket of services for the rural population. Around the same time, I was also part of the Indian Investment and Savings Survey, which laid the foundation for the social security reforms for the unorganized sector in India. So that I think in brief tells you something about the power of data collected from retail investors, collected from rural users, which can help a great deal in shaping national policy and programs. And it's great to have somebody like Mr. Bhardwaj today with us on the panel, who has first-hand experience of dealing with large-scale data and challenges that go into managing large-scale data collection and analysis. So I would turn to Mr. Bhardwaj now, and my first question would be about the challenges of data management itself. You have managed a number of large-scale surveys like annual health survey, and also led the creation of the national database of artisans. That's something I saw in your bio. These are without doubt, large-scale operations. So with scale, there is always this question of, ability to supervise and control and manage the programs. How far do you think a government organization how far do you think these organizations are equipped, how agile they are in dealing with data collection at scale?
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Thatte, and good morning, Paresh, for having me on this show. Look, we need to understand that in government, there is always this conflict about resource availability versus data collection. So, but at the same time, the entire responsibility of collecting the large set of data lies with the government, and it is primarily in the government sector right now. Though there are some smaller surveys happen in the private sector also, and I'll not go into that detail, but the large scale surveys are happening in the government sector at present. Now, so far as your questions regarding the agility of a government organization, we need to understand what data do we want. So there's always this question of having a real-time data, which to me is little, out of context for many reasons. Real-time data is needed only when we are handling an emergency, like the COVID situation, where we want a day-to-day data of the number of persons infected, and that needs to be real-time, as much as real-time as possible. Similarly, if we are using our machine language model to classify a terrorist or a non-terrorist, and our machine language, our model, that machine learning model needs to again, constantly upgraded, then that model need to be fed the data on a real-time basis. But at the same time, we must appreciate that, handling those real-time data is quite costly, and it's very resource intensive. So my take would be that we should focus on the timely availability of data. So I don't want my birth rate data of every month, or my infant mortality data of every month, because that's not going, for a geographical reason, because that's not going to change, significantly on a periodicity of monthly, on a monthly basis. It's going to change over a large period of time. Even if we want to check our interventions vis-a-vis these indicators will take those interventions require, a larger time before they show their effect. So if we start working on a real time or a large data, a data set, then, the results can be counterproductive only. That we may just realize that, oh no, nothing is happening because of our interventions. So my understanding of the thing is that the government should focus on the timely availability of data. And for that, the government setup is adequately equipped, I'll say. I'll not say it's an optimal situation or it's a model situation, but we are adequately equipped. Now, the challenge lies basically to monitor the data warriors, whom we now call them data warriors. They go place to place to the distant places in the country and collect data. But of course, there are issues of data collection. But there, the supervision should be strong. Supervision should be IT driven. We should be able to have a system which should be able to tell us that whether the person has actually gone there or not. Say, when I introduced the system in RGI, I said that any questionnaire which gets filled up in less than 1 minute is rubbish. We are not taking into consideration that, because we feel that has been done at home. So few of our team went around, collected a large number of data from the ideal questionnaire which was going to be implemented in the field, and decided the time frame which is minimum required before we can really think that this has been done at field. So this is how I see the entire thing. The system is perfectly agile. The idea is that the officers should show, the officer who is handling it, the manpower who is handling it, needs to get more involved with the entire setup and take the ownership. And I don't think then there should be a problem of availability of data.
Sure. You spoke about the data warriors and the human element that is involved in data collection. And of course, the importance of supervision and control cannot be denied. But independent of all the control, it's still important that the human resource capacity should be optimal. How would you rate the average data investigator in terms of his capacity or her capacity to collect data on the ground?
Okay, that's a very good question, I must say. That, the last mile connectivity is through these data investigators only, and these data warriors, whom we call data warriors. Now they really feel the the pain of collecting data, because they have to go everywhere. They have to face many problems also. Let me tell you, many times people, our social system is such that many times people don't agree to share data. For example, I'll tell you, when I was doing AHS, in one of the state, I found that all the information which was supposed to be filled by supposed to be, interviewed from the woman, because that was called woman questionnaire, was being filled by the male head of the household. Because the system was such that, the choice of talking about the contraceptive, for example, was not lying with the woman. So of course, the person going was a male. So that was another problem. The person going to collect the data. So what we did next time was to start sending a male and a female, a team of investigators, so that they can, really go to the person from whom the data is really need to be collected. Now, coming back to your question, we need to appreciate the work done by them. First, we sitting in headquarters, and we need to appreciate the work done by them. We need to actually take some of the data collection work ourselves and to see the problems being faced by them. So to begin with, we need to motivate them. They need to be trained extensively. They need to be trained not in the data collection, but on the softer part of it, so that they take pride in what they do. That's very important. They should be told that in a very small, maybe in a very small manner, they are contributing to the decision making. If these messages are given properly to the data warrior, then the collection definitely improves. And of course, other than that, this is the softer part of it, the carrot part of it. The stick part of it should be that we should take help of the, IT. But here we also have limitation. We are a country of low connectivity, low power, in many places. So you cannot say that, GPRS, you keep the GPRS on every time. There may not be a connectivity. So it's very difficult, but at the same time, we need to find a way out of it. I'll come back again to the SRS. When I did SRS and introduced the system of, handheld devices for the first time, I never insisted on the, online uploading of the data. I never said that. I said, you collect the data. Whenever you come back to this, a place where the connectivity is there, you upload the data. And once they uploaded the data there, my job was to immediately see, because we don't have the issue in Delhi here of low connectivity, low power. So what we did immediately, that we checked, we applied the check, and we could see that, whether that person is really doing the data collection. We have our own method of doing that. Suppose once I found that there were 7 households with the same name, head of the household. So I asked him, what is going on? So he said, sir, I was not able to handle it. So every time I could not reach the end of the questionnaire. So every time I started a new questionnaire, that's why these 7 are there. Fair enough. We could get hold of it. We could remove the 6 other, which were incomplete questionnaire and went ahead with 1 questionnaire. So such checks need to happen. So rather than checking, rather than doing the checks in terms of, what you call online or what you call real time, we should try to evolve a system where as soon as possible, the data collected gets checked. So the person who is doing it should not feel that he is policed and some policing is being done for his work. But at the same time, there is enough control over the entire data collection process. And at the same time, as I initially said, they need to be trained very, very thoroughly, because most of them, unfortunately, are not from the social sector. So asking questions about what is your preference of contraceptive, how many kids do you have, how many abortions did you have in the past? So all these things, make them very, very uncomfortable.
Questions of a culturally sensitive nature.
Yeah, it's very, very sensitive in nature, very, very private in nature. I'll again share with you one of the examples. I have quite a few, I was doing this survey of AHS, as Paresh, said in his introduction, and the usage of the contraception percentage, it was a 3-round survey. So usage of the contraception percentage was very, very low in the first round. So there are a lot of questions asked about it. And, we agreed that, there is a lot of issues because of which we are not able to yet penetrate, and people are not still using the contraceptive methods. But you will be surprised to know, because it was a panel survey, the same households were visited again and again.
Right.
And I ensured that mostly the same investigators also go. That was sort of a, experiment I undertook.
To take advantage of the rapport they built.
Yes. So, you will not believe, by the end of the 3rd round, there was the same household responding to the contraceptive part was, or in UP safe, there was 5 to 7% increase. So, we need to train them very, very thoroughly to make them understand that these are very, very sensitive and private questions we ask many times. And those questions, and why to ask about these? I mean, even how many abortions did you have, or how many kids die? How many of a mom's kid had died earlier? It's a very sensitive for that lady. She would not like to recall those horrific moments. So we need to train them very thoroughly.
When it comes to verbal autopsy, it becomes difficult.
Yeah. So that's what I had to add here.
So you spoke about the mobile devices and handheld devices and introducing the use of these things. What do you think about the next level of technology? Now, increasingly, we are talking about use of AI and machine learning. So do you feel government staff, the rank and file, are ready to embrace that technology as yet, or there are still acceptance gaps or capacity gaps?
No, I'll say this way. Any new technology, whenever it came, had to face its share of resistance. Think of the railway reservation, think of the bank. So, but there is no other option left here. So what's happening now, what we are doing till date? Now, let me just take you to the process, what we do. We, up to now, what the government is doing is getting the estimates, getting the statistics from after collecting the data. And we are saying that this village or this district of, UP or Bihar or any part of the country is having this much percentage or prevalence of XYZ parameter. Say it is birth rate, death rate, whatever, vaccination, infant mortality rate, and we are giving this data. Now, what machine learning will do? Machine learning will help us predict that given the same situation, what is the chances that this fellow will go for the next level of vaccination for his kids? And there I see the real, use of data. The policy interventions can be very, very handy. Now the policy maker will know that these 6 households has a high percentage of going for the another round of vaccination. Of course, there will be a probability attached to it. I'm not saying it will be 100%, but there are quite accurate models we have. But at the same time, there would be household would be shown to be less declined or not declined to go for another round of vaccination for their kid for any reason. Maybe there had been an adverse impact of the vaccination or whatever reason. There is a less XX. So those accessibility issues, then the government interventions, and as you were saying, the monitoring and evaluation will really be at the household level or at the village level. So rather than concentrating on all villages of a district, we'll give more concentration on those districts or those villages who are less likely to go for the next. I mean, I'm talking right now at the village level. We can go to the household level also. Yeah. If the data becomes more and more available and more things happen, then we can go to that
the
level.
Operations can become more efficient.
So the secondary use of data has still not started in our country. That needs to start. Used evidence-based planning means what? Right now we feel evidence-based planning means that, there is a difference of IMR between the two districts, adjacent districts rather, we should say. And then we try to intervene in a manner that it's not one shoe fits all, but we try to, do it in a little more, customized manner, I'll say. But the real use of data is that when beforehand we know which district is likely to, or which household or which village is likely to, likely to embrace my government program, and which district or village or household is not likely to, is so enthusiastic about the government programs. So machine learning, I really feel is the next step in this manner. And we'll have to do something about it. We'll have to ensure that these, I'm not going for AI for the time being, because I really don't, I would like to take one step at a time. So machine learning, yes, machine learning has to be now adopted and used for the implementation of the government policies.
Right. We are in the middle of this COVID pandemic now, and it has created all kinds of issues, including a lot of data overload and there is excessive data now being generated about projections of the illness, number of cases, etc. Also, this has come at a time when we were preparing for the next census, the national census. How do you think the COVID has affected the normal conduct of the census? And is there just too much data for the government to handle regarding this pandemic, and that has affected the normal data?
So far as your question regarding too much data availability is concerned, I would say data is never enough. The more the merrier. It's like oil, as we all know. So, I mean, we may not have the filtering capacity at this point in time, but it will definitely help us over a period of time. So as much data we can have, I am of the opinion that should be at least collected and compiled for the time being. And then so far as analysis and report writing and other research issues are concerned, they may be taken, in future also, so that, we have the correct understanding of the situation which we faced for which none of us were, really prepared. And so the next time when our generation or our kids or the next generation faces that same situation, they're more prepared. So I'll never say that, data is enough, and data should always be collected as much as possible. At the same time, of course, yes, due to COVID situation, the data, collection was impacted initially. But now situation is coming back to the normal. The surveys are starting. Of course, the census has yet not started, but I have not, because I don't deal directly with the subject, so I don't have much idea about what is the plan, but it will happen sooner or later. So I would say that as it affected all aspects of our life and society, COVID has affected the data collection also. But I'm pretty sure, I'm always an optimist, and I see it this way, that now with this type of thing happening, and we realize that there could be an issue with the collection of data, especially for the surveys. So we'll move towards the ideal situation. And what is that ideal situation? Ideal situation is that we start creating a system where the administrative data is, important and is enough to give us the real picture of the society. So if you ask me, SRS now I have been handling, and I'm very proud of what I did in SRS, but I always had this feeling that this survey is an extra burden on the respondent, which we need to do some surveys. There is no doubt on that. But if the respondent is bombarded with 5 or 10 surveys in an year, then his responses will be definitely not accurate. And if you ask me, even if I'm bombarded with 5 surveys in a year, so my real this will give us an opportunity to set the administrative system, and in this case, say CRS, civil registration system, in a way that the need for SRS is no more there in 5-7 years time. So in all the in all the developed country, it's only civil registration which gives the data. So you see this way. See, what does improvement in civil registration means? Improvement in civil registration means that you have more and more institutional birth and death, because then the collection of data is very easy. Why we are lacking? Because of the fact that most of the births and deaths are happening in the outside the system, outside the institution. I'll not say outside the system, but outside the institution. And that's why we need survey, because our civil registration system is not able to catch all the births and deaths. So why is that? So we start understanding that we need data. Data should come from the administrative sources as much as possible. And this is how I see we'll take it forward from there. We have all understood that surveys will get impacted at many times, and many times they get impacted not only because of COVID, because of flood, because of natural calamities, because of many other things. So I think it's a positive thing will come out.
So you said that data should mostly come from administrative sources, and government has definitely a role to play there. But we are also seeing this very strong trend that a lot of data is now getting generated through private media, social media, which are held by private corporations. And a lot of them are now sitting on a lot of personal data, which users and consumers of these media willy-nilly have given to these media houses. And there arises this scope of abuse of this information and the need for data protection. What do you think is the government's role there? Because government also is engaging a lot with social media, sometimes for social change and to take the awareness messages to the public. So when it comes to data protection and preventing abuse, what do you think is the government's role?
No, I think for the data protection, we are already moving in. It's a separate issue altogether from the data collection of the statistical data collection or data collection for the social sector. Now, what you are asking is, I think, is a very, very different issue and a very sensitive issue. I'll say, the statistical system per se, will also have to abide by the rules or the acts which will be made by the data. I think there should be a data protection act very soon. I think it was under preparation. There was a committee there also. I really don't know what exactly has happened, in last 6 months or so, but data protection in that sense needs to be governed, and there should be oversight mechanism to ensure that the abuse is not there. And we in the government who are also collecting data, not vis-a-vis the data which you are talking about, the social media and everything, but data, by doing the survey and by, looking at their administrative data. So, I mean, I also find that PAN number is also equally sensitive data, or PAN card details are equally sensitive data, or Aadhaar card details is equally sensitive data. So that our job should be to ensure that whatever the rules are made in this country and whatever the law of the land is, that should be followed by everyone, including us official statisticians who are, collecting data. So in our policy, we should be very, very clear that the privacy as prescribed by the government or the law of the land will be maintained. So we collect data, and we being in the official system does not give us any specific right, to look at the data of the others. So all the, important, mechanism like, making the data anonymous or pseudonymous, we should also take, and we do take that into account. So even if we collected, as Paresh said, around 25 million or 2.5 crore data in one round of AHS, we suitably made them anonymous, so that the researchers also get the fuel they want, and which is very, very necessary. But at the same time, the response of an individual does not get exposed with his, and that should not get, exposed in a sense that nobody should be able to say that what exactly this person has said. So nobody knows that which village it was, or which, we just broadly made it in an area that this was this area, and these are the responses. So we do take care of these issues, and I hope that whenever law comes into the picture, we should all stick to that and abide by it.
Sure. Now, you are working with a particular ministry, and you have also worked with the RGI in the past. Now, these are institutions by themselves, but government also has a lot of capacity across the board in terms of, having academic institutions like the IITs or IIMs, Indian Statistical Institute. There's a lot of intellectual capital within government itself. What do you feel in terms of the cooperation among institutions that is taking place? Do you think all this capital is being optimally used? Where do you think are the areas of improvement?
Look, it would not be fair for me to comment on the real collaboration within the government and the institutions, because in many situations I may not be aware of exactly what is going on. But my views are the following: that the official statistical system should work very, very closely with the institutions, as it happens in many parts of the world. All these model setting, all these new, new trends and technologies should be developed in the labs there in the educational institutions. And then at the same time, it is the duty of the educational institutions to ensure that whatever they create is not only, academic in nature, and it can be very well replicated on the ground. Once that happens, then I think we can achieve the ideal situation, and we will be able to know and get a better insight of the data which we collect. So that's how it should happen. What's really happening is, I'm really not, in a position to give a comment on that, because I'm really not aware. But if given, if you ask me, I'll feel all the research, all the model setting, everything should be done there. And this is the duty of the institutions to ensure that replicable model, which can be replicated by the lesser models like me on ground, are created so that we do. So this, coming back to this machine learning model, which we have been discussing. Yeah. Now, this machine learning thing should happen at any one of the institutions. And the most appropriate model then should be given to us to run a pilot, or then later on a bigger implementation. So this is how I feel, but I feel the role of institutions are very, very important. The importance of research has to be, there, and the importance of research on the real data needs to be encouraged. And I think most of the researchers should try to implement real problems on a real data. And that should help the country as well.
My last question would be about your current role, which you are playing in the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs. What do you think are the best applications of statistics in your current role, and how are you taking it forward?
Yeah. So sports is one of the fields where the application of, there is a huge possibility and potential for, application of such, machine learning or AI, and even the statistics. So to begin with, when we talked about the real-time data, now sports is another field where real-time data is required. So a player, when he is playing a match, his oxygen level should come every 5 minutes or every 3 minutes to give an idea to the coach that whether he is tiring or not, whether does he need a rest or not. At the same time, what I'm doing right now, unfortunately, as it happens in India, there is no database, or hardly any, I should say. I'll be very, unfair if I say there is no database, but there's very less database right now of players. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to get the data of each of the players since he's 14 or 15. When they come for the first time to handle the, to get the training in our centers. And from there, we are trying to get the data and we are trying to see their improvement. So all their timings, say he's an athlete or a runner, or his timings, all his sports science parameters, which me and you are not, very well equipped to talk about, but there are sports science experts in physiology, there are science experts in biomechanics. I mean, you all know, you may be knowing, in UK, there is a UK Institute of Sports, whose only job is sports science and sports engineering and biomechanics. So they are sitting on the huge data. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to gather data as much as possible. And here, as you know, even the cricket, since the cricket is going on, in cricket, what happens nowadays? Before a batsman reaches, everybody knows on which ball he's likely to play which shot because of the data only. So right now, the application of machine learning and AI in the government for the sports sector is little away. I'll not say in a real distant future, but in a very near future, it's there. But for that, we need to build that database so that our machine can learn. Our machine can learn and then provide the solution for it. So, all the coaches, what they want that, this is the daily training dose which they have given to each of the player, or daily training routine, I should say. And they want to see whether the player is able to achieve the desired result or not. So that's sort of a thing which they want on a day-to-day basis, unlike a infant mortality rate, or unlike a birth rate, which is on a 6 monthly basis is also fine, yearly basis is also fine, because that's a very, very big thing which is not going to change over a period of time. But at the same time, player is for 6 months, he is on a training for 1 month, 2 months. So we want to see his daily improvement. So sports is a place where, it's a real need for the data, and it's a real need for a real-time data, which is, very strange, but I really feel that here, not only timely, but real-time data should come. So, we are working on it. So we are creating a national sports repository of, data for the players. And we are very hopeful that we should be able to achieve what we have opted for.
Sure. Thanks. That brings us to the end of a really fascinating discussion, Mr. Bhardwaj. In the view of time, we will have to stop it there. But of course, as you know, and we all know, any discussion on data is really, once it starts, it's difficult to put an end to it. It's an infinite field, and all of us have so much to gain and so much to learn from it. Thank you very much indeed.